days are cooler, nights are warmer, and I put the blame on you. Time moves slow, but my heart beats faster. When these eyes are looking right at you, right at you. You give me something to believe in, just what I needed. You're the closest.
Garrison Hayes is with us. We were having a little off mic conversation about the state of our world and how there's a lot at stake. There's a lot riding on it, which is why those of us who have microphones, which seems like everybody has a mic. Everybody's got a podcast, Garrison. Everybody's got a platform. Everybody's got a YouTube channel. It's just out there, right? Everybody's got an opinion. How do we set the table for correct, right information to get out? How do we develop the appetite for that?
No, I think it's important for us to do what you just said. We have to develop the appetite. I think it's easy. I mentioned this before. I think it's easy for those of us with microphones and cameras and platforms to lean too far into entertainment in a way that, like, that's the stuff that gets the clicks and the views and keeps people but we got to talk straight. I actually had the opportunity to go to the NRB, which is the National Radio Broadcasters, Religious Broadcasters Convention back, I think it was in February or March. It's like the largest right-wing Christian radio media broadcasting convention in the country. Trump was there this year. And sitting in that room gave me the perspective of, I think, what's missing for many people who are interested in progress for this country and for our people specifically. There was a focus. Like, these folks are legislating for AM radio to be in every car. That's what they're advocating for. Why? Because a lot of their right-wing Christian broadcasts are on AM radio. Now, some folks would say, let's make sure we're in the places. Let's make sure we're on YouTube and let's get on all the podcasts and all. They're like, no, we're not going to bow to what the culture is already moving towards. We're going to create the culture. We're going to ensure that the infrastructure is in place for the culture that we want to see go forward. And seeing the way those folks were being so intentional and focused and on code to get Project 2025 pushed forward and to get their candidate elected, it gave me a new appreciation for the focus that we have to have in order to push forward exactly what you're saying, that appetite. Make sure that folks are aware that this is what we need to focus on. And this is how we need to kind of show up to it, to make sure that our children and our children's children have a future and a country to actually live in. And so that's what it's about for me. And I know for you as well, this hyper focus on making sure that we're keeping the main thing. And it's so easy to get distracted by other stuff. These days. I
mean, if you're really peeling back this, beyond our Project 2025, everyone's talking about it, but this has been in full effect since 2008. Ever since the possibility of a black man being president, this will never happen again. Hell no. Okay. Yep. What do we have to do? All right, Tea Party. We got to do the local elections, the school boards. We got to control the books. We got to, so Texas controls the books. All right. All of the school books that go out, like, they're at the source. We worried about the water being dirty, but we need to get to the very source. They are poisoning the well. So here we go, right? When you talk about that, local news. It used to be, I grew up in a household where it was only like 3 channels, Well, it's actually 2, 4, and 7. If you had foil, you could get 11 and 13, and rabbit ears. You might be able to get a couple other channels. Channel 9 came later. TV went off at a certain time. There was this boo and this little flag or sometimes, and that was it. But I watched every evening at 6 o'clock, Walter Cronkite. We all watched, Walter Cronkite or David Brinkley. I don't know who was on ABC. I don't even think they had news. But those were the people that we watched, right? But local news was important. And, I grew up with Sue Simmons and Chuck Scarborough. And, it was like, that was our local news. Now, throughout the country, local news has been co-opted by the same people that gave us Fox. Those same conservative think tank folk have bought stations as a conglomerate, and they're literally feeding local news. So there's no running from it. It's not just Fox. Fox is not the problem because that's 3.5 million people on a good night. We're talking about across the country.
Mm-hmm.
Your local news has been co-opted.
Yep.
So where do people, how do we, go to the streets on that? Because that's equally as important as police reform. How we get our information.
Yep. I mean, I think a lot of people are hungry for it and thirsty for it, and so showing up and making sure that you're creating the stuff, that's my focus right now. Is like, how do I create the stuff for people and do it in a way where it's interesting and engaging and folks can kind of like be brought into this conversation? How do I make the stuff that feels academic and heady and uninteresting and boring and like, I don't want to do politics? How do I bring that into the conversation in a way where it feels relevant to folks? I think that's the exercise. I'm always reminded that, like, I think about Baldwin and Ida B. Wells and Zora Neale Hurston, all these folks who found language, who found a way. Like they were living in a time that had, honestly, a smaller vocab. Like, the English language has grown and ways to get information out have grown today, but they still found a way to be profound and to cut through the noise and to say the necessary thing in a way that cut to the heart and felt real and relevant. And so I keep that kind of idea present in my mind as I'm creating, as I'm writing. It's like these folks way back when found a way to communicate the truth in profoundly impactful, ways. How I have no excuse, right? Like, I have no excuse. And I think that's the bottom line for us is like, yes, Sinclair and all of these news conglomerates are getting their message out, and they are poisoning the minds of the American people for their own capitalistic and political gain. Right. But we have a way in, and we can't forget that.
We cannot. Garrison Hayes is here. To whom much is given, much is required. I always kind of use that as my North Star for how I, there's a responsibility that comes with the opportunities or the blessings that you have in your life. And I would never want to close my eyes with so much, doing harm, because there's a lot of responsibility with having a platform, and the personal aggrandizement, the personal wealth, the personal success that people have used it for. Even these folk in these institutional organizations that are supposed to do good for Black folk have done good for themselves. And at some point, we're going to have, the point should be now to say the thing and then to hold them accountable. Because I also believe you in that room going to those conferences, did they treat you poorly? They probably didn't treat you poorly. Were you treated poorly, Garrison? No. I don't think they treated you poorly, right? Because they're not racist. As long as you fall in line. Because if you're there, then you must be, down with whatever. I mean, the head of the Proud Boys had a lot of melanin, right?
Yep.
Before Dante Nero started it, then it was taken over by another brother who spent a lot of time in jail right now. But you think about, like, they're not necessarily, they don't think they're racist. The policies are.
Yeah.
Right. So, but just fall in line with us. What was the scariest thing that came out of being in a room with them?
So one of the interesting things when Trump came out at that event, he, if you watch clips of him, you're like, this guy doesn't make any sense. He's saying all kinds of crazy, untrue things. Like, that's wild. But to be in the room, he spoke for, I think, 2 hours that night, which was just insane. I don't think I could talk for 2 hours straight, but he talked for 2 hours straight. The scariest part was the hypnotic nature of it all, that the room started out very alert, but by the end of it, he's been talking and just seamlessly weaving lies and little, agendas into everything that he said. Exactly.
Fake news.
Literally, just weaving it in, little distortions. And before it was over, I don't think that the average person could have been able to tell you what was truth and what was fiction. They couldn't have told you what he said, right? Like, it was this very hypnotic kind of mind meld is what happened in the room. But I do want to say something else. You talked about how being in the room, they'll treat you like a certain way. Like I think that is very, very true. I was actually at the United States Capitol outside, to be abundantly clear, on January 6th during the insurrection. I was there. And I was walking around trying to get an idea of what was happening. I just kind of wanted to witness it. And I was there
So
when
why
they
did you
breached.
wait? Hold on, Garrison. Why did you know something was about to pop off?
You
What
know
what?
how I knew? So
Come on.
I lived in the DC area at the time, and I'd been watching the election in Georgia, how folks in Atlanta, Georgia, my hometown, delivered, a black senator and delivered the Senate to the Democrats. And I thought it was just this really monumental moment of black power. And I wanted to be out there. I have this hoodie that says Atlanta influences everything. I wanted to be out there wearing my hoodie and get a couple pictures. That is the honest to goodness truth. Okay. And I knew that there was going to be this big thing, but no one, I mean, I didn't know. I won't say no one. I didn't know that there would be an insurrection. And so I'm out there just trying
You
to
just
get
out there flexing.
a little flex. I'm not going
Little
to hold
flex.
you. Like I was out there doing a little Atlanta flex, and things popped off. But one of the interesting things about being out there was that all of these white folks saw me as one of the very few black people out there. There were a few, there were others, but there weren't many of us. They saw me and they all gave me that kind of knowing nod, like, yeah, you're one of us, right? And like that's the thing. Like your presence can in some ways almost make them feel like they're doing the right thing. And so I took every opportunity to say Trump lost. Hey, by the way, just so you know, Trump lost. And this was like before I was even a journalist or any of that stuff. I was just out there as me. And I took every opportunity to let them know what I really thought. But I agree with you that being there, they will treat you like you're one. They assume that you're one of them, and you have to disrupt that assumption.
Mm. Are, are you nervous because there's a low key or high key violence and an unreasonable like it that mob mentality? Watching January 6th from the television, it was like that courage that they got being around each other, watching the march through Nashville or whatever with their little dirty rags over their face. They've devolved from the Klan. They used to actually have stitching and ironing and stuff was bleached. Now they got some dirty rags over their faces, and khakis and stuff.
Yeah.
Did you ever fear for your safety?
I did not fear for my safety until they started running toward. It was interesting. Folks were running toward the Capitol, and some folks were completely put off by this idea of breaching the Capitol, and they were running away from it. That was that moment of chaos where people were running in both directions, where it was the first time I really felt that there was like imminent kind of danger present, that I needed to get out of there. I'd actually been in DC for the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests as well. I was there the day that Trump stood out in front of the chapel with the Bible, and they pepper bombed the protesters. I just left before the pepper bombing, and the military presence in downtown in DC during the Black Lives Matter protests was significantly different. Like there was so many more folks down there, military, trucks and troops down there for the Black Lives Matter protests than for the January 6th insurrection. And so even when things were a bit chaotic, even when people were going in different directions in 2020, summer 2020 for Black Lives Matter, it never felt like things were out of control. Because they had a significantly diminished military presence on January 6th, it really felt like things could go any way. It felt like they might overthrow the Capitol. Like you just had no idea. So we got out of there as soon as possible. That was the danger that I felt. But one of the interesting things since then is that the rhetoric has really turned up on violence. And going back to that religious broadcasters convention here in Nashville back in March or February, when I was there, before Donald Trump stepped foot on stage, he played a national anthem or something of that nature sung by the J6 Patriots. So these were folks who had who had literally carried out an insurrection, who had literally breached the Capitol, broke the law, beat police officers, were unruly, were criminal in every way.
Killed police officers.
Killed a police officer.
Yeah.
Those were the people who he'd chosen to play a recording of them singing the national anthem. And it's bizarre. It's really bizarre to have been there and then to be gaslit today for those who are saying that it wasn't what it was. I was there and it was everything that folks are saying that it was. It's a lot.
No. So Garrison is here, and we're having a conversation with Garrison Hayes, journalist. As we head to November, I made a decision today. I was going to be zero tolerant. I'm not really entertaining any, Biden must go. I'm not doing that until least if and when he steps down. I'm riding with Biden all the way. Bump that. If y'all can ride with a, pussy grabbing, potential pedophile or, alleged pedophile, 34 felony, 80 plus indictment person who 6 times bankrupt, 5 times deferred, didn't serve this country. A horrible human being. If y'all can ride with that, I'm riding with this man. He'll be as old as possible. That said, I'm also not entertaining a whole lot of, well, he should step down stuff. I'm not doing that either. We're going to focus full steam ahead. What are you most concerned about November? Because I'm actually really concerned about November. I feel like no matter what happens, this is going to be like a problem in November, no matter who wins. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I am concerned as well. I think you're right that if folks can vote for Donald Trump, then nothing that Biden has done or his age should not disqualify him either. I'm concerned, that Democrats will cannibalize themselves between now and the convention, maybe between now and November. So that's a concern for me. We've seen what happens when Donald Trump loses. Like, he just doesn't take it well. And we see what they want to do if he wins. And so what America looks like after this November is a real question mark. I think the future of this country is a question mark. And I think, ensuring that a fascist, he claims that he wants to be a dictator on day one. I think ensuring that folks who have that kind of mentality are not in power should be number one priority for Republicans, actually. I think Republicans should be the ones talking about getting a new candidate.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate that they aren't. So I say this, Karen, there's a lot to be concerned about this November, but I think what should be, again, the main thing is getting out to vote. Like the people listening to this program should concern themselves primarily with getting into the ballot box and getting the folks that they know and their friends friends to do the same. That's the number one priority.
My days are cooler, nights are warmer, and I put the blame on you. Time moves slow, but my heart beats faster. When these eyes are looking right at you, you give me something to believe in, just what I needed. You're the closest.